All right, Culinary, we are back. We have pumpkin crumb muffins here, so you should find a laminated recipe. My goal is to have the push pins for you that have the clips so that we're not putting a push pin through our laminated recipes whenever possible up on our cabinets. I did order those, so they should be coming. That's just a side note for this recipe, but I do prefer you use the clothespin push pins on these so that we're not ruining our laminated recipes here. So reading through our recipe, I did already preheat our oven to 375, but remember we need to do that 375. Right here, as you can kind of see, I'll post a picture of it as well with this recipe. I have everything set in place for the recipe that I might need, already pre-measured out. I thought I'd save you the time of watching me pre-measure out all of these ingredients again. But just like we talked about in class, we need to make sure all of our measurements are level. We're using the proper liquid or solid measuring cups. You can kind of see in some of them, I just left them right in the measurement cups. And in others, I put them in a little dish. The proper name for this is called mise en place, which is a French term. It just means gather, or everything has a place right here. So if I have a nice workspace like this where I have stainless steel, like you do in your kitchens on the side tables that you use as your desks, what you can't see from that angle likely is right here in front of every ingredient, I wrote with Expo marker what it was, just so as I'm going, I have ease of going. All right, so let's get into it. Our first instruction says to preheat the oven. We did that. And then it says to line our muffin tin here with either nonstick spray or muffin liners. I'll tell you about that later. I'm going to skip it for now and I'll tell you why later. So we're going to get right into it. In a large bowl, we're going to use our KitchenAids with our whisks. So again, I'm lining it up, I'm pressing it, and I'm turning it so it locks in place. To remove it, some of us got held up on this. We're going to take our whisk, push it up, turn it, and pull down. If you push it up, turn it, it's locked in place, and you can't just pull it right off. Again, push it up, turn it, pull it down. Okay, I know for some of us, we're like, yeah, of course, Ms. Reynolds already telling us this, but some people don't have KitchenAids at home, and this is new to them. So I'm going to reinstate that because we got a little confused last time. All right, in the large bowl, we're going to whisk the flour. So I have my large measurement. You'll see two lists of ingredients on our recipes. We have ingredients, and then we have a subcategory called crumb toppings. As you'll notice, if you read through the recipe, which you should, before you start any recipe, I have 1 3/4 cups all-purpose flour in the general ingredient section. This is for like the muffin batter. And then for the crumb topping, I also have a 1/2 cup all-purpose flour. We need those measured separately. They go in at separate times. They're separate ingredients. So I'm going to put my 1/2 cup there for later for the crumb topping. But right now, I'm just looking at the general ingredients list. So I'm going to put in my 1 3/4 cup all-purpose flour. Put that back. Next is sugar. I have my sugar measured out here. 1 cup, just regular granulated sugar. Then we have pumpkin pie spice. I actually did not have pumpkin pie spice on hand today, so I used a mixture. I made my own little mixture, which is perfectly fine. That's all the spice companies do. I have whole ingredients of the spices: cinnamon, allspice, nutmeg, clove, and ginger. So I just did a little mixture of that. You can always just Google kind of the ratio of those, cinnamon being the most, cloves being the least, in that mixture, and I just created my own pumpkin spice mixture there. We have that, and then extra cinnamon, because we want these to be extra cinnamony. I will say that I doubled all of the spice. I know we've talked about baking being an exact science where we need to measure exactly. The one caveat to that is that when we do spices, it can be a little bit different. When I do vanilla in recipes, you'll see in the chai scone demonstration, I double my vanilla. I usually double my spices on things like this. I'm just a person that likes a lot of spice in my dishes. So I double it, and that's okay. It's not going to mess with the ingredients, the levels that much. Just do like another teaspoon of cinnamon. I just like a more intense flavor. Then we're going to do our teaspoon of baking soda and our teaspoon of baking powder. I could have put those together, but for the purpose of the demonstration, just wanted to show you that those were different. And then our salt. They all go in. And then we're going to whisk our dry ingredients together, starting on low so we don't have a big cloud around us. And it would help if I had my mixer turned on. This here. This down. And then I just realized I accidentally grabbed a whisk from our KitchenAids with the smaller whisks. This professional KitchenAid does need a bigger whisk, so I'm just going to hand whisk all of this ingredients in real quick. It'll take me 30 seconds, and I'm not going to go search for this other whisk right now. There we go. But if I would have had the right whisk, it would have just done it just the way we like, perfectly. All right, from there, we have to switch to our paddle anyway because we're putting in wet ingredients. Unless we're whipping something, we don't use a paddle for wet ingredients. In this case, we will use the paddle because we're just mixing it. So now we're going to stir in our 1 cup of pumpkin. I'm going to put this down for ease. Pumpkin's one of those things that just gets nice and ooey gooey, so you might need a scraper to properly measure that. This is a puree. You'll notice in the notes of this ingredient that it says that you can swap this out with sweet potato if you want a different texture or different flavor, same texture. You would have to bake those sweet potatoes and then puree them so it mirrored this image here. We're going to stir in our pumpkin and then our oil. We'll give our pumpkin a little stir to start it out. Keeping in mind we really don't want to overmix when it comes to batter. And the flour is already in there, so we're mindful at this point of not overmixing. Putting in my oil. Then I have my 1/4 cup, I believe. Yes, 1/4 cup of applesauce here. A really nice way, if you have maybe little siblings or you do it, of the little apple squeezy pouches that have the little tabs on top. It is the same amount as just 1 squeezy tab of applesauce. If you have that, you don't want to open the big jar for that here. And then we have our eggs that are already pre-whisked here. The recipe does say 2 eggs whisked. So I just used a little fork, whisked them together in this dish, and place them in here now. And my vanilla. Again, I did double my vanilla because I like a lot of flavor. All right, and it says, being careful, it should say being, not bring, careful not to over mix. So I'm going to start it on low and slow so we don't get a big dust powder. And bring it up a little bit. I have this on about medium-high now. As my ingredients come together, I'm just going to stop it, bring it down, take my scraper here, my rubber spatula, make sure that all of my ingredients are scraped down right here. Making sure I get the very bottom of the bowl, because sometimes on KitchenAids, the mixer doesn't quite get to that bottom. Giving it another go for a few seconds, nothing more than 30. All right, and then here comes the time where we take this paddle out. We can use our finger just to scrape the mixture off. And then I put this plate here just for this reason, so I don't get it all over my counter. Your batter should look something like this at this point. Here, just nice and mixed, kind of exactly what you'd think pumpkin batter would look like. I'm going to go wash my hands and I'll take you to the next step. All right, here we are back again. I want to show you 2 ways, kind of 3 ways, that you can do muffins. One, you can do your traditional muffin liners. When I'm doing muffin liners, I don't spray the bottom with oil, especially for something like muffins that already have oil in them, because the liners get a little bit soggy anyway. So there's no real reason to do it. And if I've done it before thinking like, oh, maybe I should do it, and then the bottoms of my liners get just caked in oil, and it's just not very pretty. The other way that you can do this, you can use liners like this. I really prefer at home. I use like the brown paper liners that kind of look more professional and pretty, but it's super not necessary. This is really all you need. If you run out of liners, which I've done plenty of times, I just get a whim and I'm like, I'm going to bake some cupcakes or muffins or whatever today. And then I go and I do it and I realize, oh, I don't have any liners back in stock. You can just spray your pan, just a little spritz on all the sides is all you need. Try not to get to this top, because if you get a bunch of oil on the top of your pan, it just bakes on there and then you have to scrub it off. It gets kind of stained. The other way you could do this is you could take a paper towel. Let me show you real quick. Like this. You would simply take your oil. I had just oil in this measuring cup here. You take your oil, place it on your paper towel like this, and just rub it around the bottom of and the sides of all of the little cups. It only takes a few seconds, and it is way cheaper than buying spray oil. Spray oil is probably $3-4, maybe even $5 or $6 now as groceries go up. A can or a little dab of oil is about half that price when it's measured out. I'm going to wipe off all the top part of my pan from that oil wherever I can, just again so I'm not sitting there scrubbing baked on oil off of my pan or ruining it later. I have made that mistake before in my life, and as I get older and I buy nicer pans, like this Wilton pan that's a little bit heavier, I just find that I like to keep my things a little bit nicer. So this is a big cookie scoop. Works perfectly. If you don't have one, just use a spoon. Totally fine. So I'm going to start by taking a scoop, and just like you would think, placing it to the muffin is about 3/4 full. So you really don't need a full scoop, I guess, with this scoop here. It's a little bit bigger than the one that I typically use, so I have about that much left, about a quarter left in there when I use it. The reason you don't want to overfill your muffins is they kind of just mushroom out over the top of the pan, and it just doesn't look very pretty, and you don't get that nice even bake. Right here. So I just finished filling my liners, and then I'm just going to do the exact same thing over here in my uncovered part. I guess my unlined part of my pan is a better way to say that. Again, really not wanting to fill this more than 3/4 full. Scrape down the sides of my bowl, so all of my batter is on the side, so it's not getting in my scoop. Set to the side here. If you notice later on that, like, oops, I filled this one too full, you can just take a spoon or a fork later and take that out. It's always better to fix your mistakes than just deal with them and have uneven muffins later on. Super easy fix now. This here. And this did equal out to about perfectly 12 muffins. I've had a lot of recipes where, like, oops, there's enough batter left for 2 extra muffins, or maybe 5 or 6. In that case, I've done 2 things. One, well, I guess 3 things. 1, I've just gotten out another muffin pan, put it in there just like that. 2, you can get cute little ramekins that are oven safe and place them in there for kind of a mini cake, or a mini loaf pan is the 3rd, where you can just have a kind of a little bread loaf of pumpkin batter, just the same. So, as you can see, I have a few places where my batter got to the edge of my pan where the muffin is not supposed to be. In that case, I'm just going to wipe it off. You can either use your well-oiled finger, like mine is right now, or you can take a little towel, kind of get in there. But again, it'll just burn to the surface of that pan up here because it's flat and not getting the same temperature regulation, and we just don't want that burnt on top that we have to scrape off later. It looks bad, it tastes bad, just overall not great. So I'm going to set my muffins to the side right now, and I have to make my crumb topping. So I set out this measuring bowl here just because I'd used all of the other little clear bowls in this classroom to do my videos today. I'm not using it as a liquid measuring cup right now. I'm just using it purely as a mixing bowl that's clear so you can see it on the video. So I'm now using that 1/2 cup all-purpose flour, placing it into my bowl. Then I have my 1/2 cup light brown sugar. You'll notice sometimes with brown sugar when it measures, it'll just say like 1/2 cup brown sugar. You measure it like normal, leveling off the top of that measuring cup. Sometimes you'll also see packed, the word packed next to your measurement. That means you're kind of pressing it down, making sure that it is nice and tight in there. So you're kind of getting the same effect as a heaping cup there. Then I have melted butter. I will place here, a little by little, and then my pumpkin pie spice as well, which I did leave just right over here. Like this. Place it all around. And then I just need my whisk. Start whisking around my crumb topping. It should look just like it sounds, like a crumb. I'll slowly add in the rest of my butter, kind of trying to get it mixed around so that we get even crumbs rather than a big lump. Making sure we get all the sides here. So you'll notice that as you add in your butter, you'll start to see your mixture turn from a more powdery white substance with all of the flour to sort of dark brown, looking like brown sugar. Dump in the rest of my butter here. It smells so good. It smells all the pumpkin spice fall flavors that I personally love. Fall is not my favorite season. I'm a summer girl, but fall does have every other season beat with all of the baked goods. All right, if you see any clumps of just like powdered sugar or brown sugar or just flour in here, you can just break it up with your fingers right now. Make sure it gets mixed in. We want a crumb, but we don't want one ingredient crumb. We want a nice crumb mixture. Then you're just going to take and sort of evenly sprinkle the crumb around your muffin. I know one place that I have seen a really well done crumbled muffin time after time is Starbucks. For better or for worse, they have really uniformed baked goods that always look delicious and appealing because that's how they make their money. And if you're looking for that nice crumbly crumb topping, this is exactly how you do it. You just bake it on just like this. I always am a little bit conservative when I'm doing my crumb mixture, as I do kind of my first round of crumb mixture all over, and then I can always go back if we have extra in the bowl and add to it. But I have done it before where, whoops, I used way too much on my first 6 muffins, and then I ran out for my last 6 muffins, and I've either had to make another batch or just had kind of ununiform muffins, and we don't want that. We want them all to look nice, uniform, pretty. Assume that we're using these on some event, and you want a whole tray to look the exact same. That's how places like Starbucks make their money, is they have nice uniform baked goods. You always get the exact same thing, and you know if you like it or not, right? So if you really like it, you want to go back for that same exact experience. That's what we want for our baked goods as well. We want everyone to be the same exact experience for the same recipe. And then if we want a different experience, we just make a new recipe. Call it something different. All right, so I'm going back over with what is left. It looks like this recipe does a really good job of calling for more crumb topping than is really necessary, to me at least. So you don't feel like you have to use the whole thing. If you don't want to use all of this crumb topping, don't. It can just be unfortunately tossed or saved to use for something else. Sometimes I've even saved mine to put on like my cream of wheat or oatmeal in the morning, because it's all the good things. It's just butter, sugar, a little bit of flour, exactly what you want on it in the morning. Maybe throw a couple apple slices in that oatmeal, and you have a really nice hearty breakfast that tastes like fall with a little bit of extra protein and fiber. All right, so I have about this much crumb topping left. I'm just not going to use it for this recipe. I'll use it for something else. Right now, I'm kind of looking like a mess again on my top. So I am just going to take and brush all of this off with my finger. I'll just wipe up my counter afterward. I think that's kind of the easiest way to do this. Kind of unavoidable mess with crumble topping. I know some bakeries, if you're doing like 10 dozen of these large batch, so you're making, like 120 of these muffins, you might use a sheet tray here to catch all the crumbs so you can keep reusing them for the next batch. But you guys aren't doing that today. So you can just put it on your counter and then wipe it back into the trash at the end. So I'll do a close-up so you can see what this crumble topping roughly looks like. So we just have little pieces here of the crumb placed on top. You can do less than this, but more is probably going to just burn or fall off. All right, they're going to go into our preheated oven at 375 degrees. When we think that they are done, I believe the recipe calls for 20 minutes, you're going to put a toothpick in the middle. If that toothpick comes out with any wet batter, they're not done and you need to put them back in for a couple minutes. All right, back to our muffins. You'll notice my table has changed here. I am also in the middle of the scone demo, but as we're waiting on ingredients to freeze and bake, we're back to the muffins. So you won't see that on here, but you might just notice the change. Glaze is really easy, or an icing drizzle for our muffins. First of all, I'll walk up so you can see a little closer view. These are how our muffins should turn out. This is obviously the lined and then the unlined. I kind of like the look of the unlined a little bit better. I think they look a little bit more rustic, professional myself. But you do have a safer bet with the lined, and they'll stay together a little bit more if you're transporting them. And then also if you're serving at an event, it's nice for people to feel like they can have a sanitary little tray built in here. So right here we just have regular powdered sugar, nothing special here, and some water. That's all we need for icing, okay? So I'm going to pour some water into my powdered sugar. Whisk it in. This is something you can kind of do by eye. I put way too much water in this powdered sugar, which is why I have the powdered sugar here, just to add to it. You can just pour a little bit. I'll grab a spoon. I'll do this the right way. In until we have a nice thick mixture. I'll show you what this looks like. Like that. You just kind of have to play back and forth until you get the right consistency that we're looking for here. Not quite, still a little too watery there. We're almost there, but I'm going to add another teaspoon or so of powdered sugar into my icing mixture. Thicken it up a little bit. Should have a consistency similar to yogurt. Almost. It kind of feels like you're mixing glue here. It's kind of fun. All right, that looks about right. So you can either do this, you can take your little fork here, take your muffin and drizzle, and icing's completely optional if you want to drizzle on top, just like this. I like to do a little crisscross motion, but you can kind of do what you like. Inevitably, you'll get some on whatever countertop you're working with here. Make this a little bit thicker for this way. The other option that I kind of prefer is we're going to do a little cheap sort of rip-off piping bag here. All you're going to do is take a Ziploc bag, open it up, roll it open so that your zipper is rolled over like this. That way we're not getting any of the icing in the zipping area. Just go ahead and pour our icing mixture into the Ziploc bag. Easy if you just have a friend hold it open for you, or you could, if you're doing a larger amount, you could set it into a cup and pour that way. Then you're going to like this. Try to take most of the air out. Close up your Ziploc bag. Now we have kind of a cheap rip-off piping bag here, just like you would do frosting. The key to this is we're just going to do the tiniest little cut ever on the tip. You can always do a bigger cut if you feel like it's not big enough, but you can't ever go back on it, right? So you're just going to cut way less than you would think. Just the smallest cut. It would work if my scissors were a little sharper. That you can imagine here. And I'm going to take I guess I could go a little bit bigger on my hole, which is totally fine. I have room to take more off, but never less. And you can drizzle back and forth just like that. And again, I'll do it that way. So we just have a nice glaze icing look on our muffin. That's that. You can always do more. If you want it to look more like frosting, you just make this a little bit thicker with more powdered sugar. Or if you want it to look just like this, a nice light glazed icing look, you can do that. Super easy. These are a nice, beautiful, easy fall dish to use.